Hey everyone, this is Matt. Welcome back to my channel, Blind to Billionaire. Should I disclose or not disclose my low vision prior to or at the time of meeting new people? Great question. I'll have the answer coming up.
Good job, man.
So should I disclose or should I not disclose my low vision prior to or at the time of meeting new people? That has actually been a really hard question for me because honestly, I don't know the right answer. I've approached this both ways, and both ways have turned out well in some situations, and both situations have turned out poorly in some situations. So I actually do have some examples, and I'm just going to I'll talk through them, and then we'll go from there. So one example would be actually this previous weekend. On Saturday, as I mentioned in some of my previous videos, my wife and I own a couple of rental properties, and we were actually meeting some new renters. The previous tenants moved out, and the new tenants were moving in on Saturday. And we've been talking through email and on the phone and things like that for a couple days, couple weeks actually. And I never disclosed anything to them as far as my vision. And I just thought, it just doesn't matter. They're my tenants, they're great people, but they're my tenants. I don't need to tell them my whole life story. They don't need to know that. So I didn't disclose it. So then on Saturday, when we all arrived at the house, we met and everything went fine. We shook hands and everything. It was fine initially, but you could tell there was maybe a little bit of question on their end as far as like, why isn't this guy looking at me? Why isn't he making eye contact? Things like that. So then we went into the house and we looked around, gave them a tour, talked about everything, answered any questions that they had. And again, I kind of kept my distance. I typically do that when I'm around people that I don't know. I usually stand further away than most people typically would, and it's a little bit awkward. And the reason I do that is because I've been in situations where I think a person is further away than I think they are, and I actually bump into them, and that's really awkward. So I base a person's distance away from me on the loudness of their voice or the position of their voice. So if it sounds to me like they're about 10 feet away, I'll try to stand, I don't know, 8 feet away, something like that, just roughly. I try to stand far enough, but possibly in some situations it's maybe a little further than most communication would take place in that type of setting. So anyway, we walked through the house, gave them a tour, answered a bunch of questions, and then it came time to look through some paperwork, hand over the keys, and sign a few documents. And when it came to that time, I kind of just again stood back and I explained everything I was doing, but I wasn't really engaging with the paperwork. I knew exactly what it was and where they needed to sign and everything like that, but I wasn't exactly pointing out lines and different sentences or just different parts on the paperwork. So again, it was a little bit weird to them. And then, so that was fine. We all signed and everything was good. And then when it came time to leave, again, we thanked them, we shook their hands, and that was actually the most awkward time. And the reason is the guy was standing in front of me and I thanked him and I shook his hand and it was fine. And then his fiance was standing somewhere to my right. I wasn't exactly sure, but I had an idea that she was standing roughly 4 or 5 feet away from me to my right. So I kind of took about 2 steps to my right and I kind of just put my hand out to where I thought she was, and she wasn't exactly there. So it was really awkward because she wasn't there, but I put my hand out to shake her hand and thank her. And then we did that, and I think everybody felt really awkward at that time. I definitely did. No one said anything, but you could just feel the awkwardness in the situation. So anyway, we shook hands and then we walked out, and when we were walking back to the car, I was feeling really bad just about myself and about the situation, because I typically do in those situations, because I feel like I just make an idiot of myself, and it just really beats up my ego a lot. So we drove home and I thought, you know what, this is just really awkward. I just can't stand this anymore. So I sent the renter guy, I have his phone number, and I wrote up a nice text message and I said, hey, it was really great to meet you and all of that. And then at the end I said, this is really awkward and I should have told you, I should have disclosed this previously, but I'm actually blind. And he wrote back and he was really nice. He actually didn't even mention anything about it. But he obviously read it, and he just thanked us and said, you guys are so great and you're so nice and it was great to meet you and we love the house and everything like that. But I felt so much more relieved after I disclosed that to him. And then right after that, my wife told me, oh, when you were out in the garage, I actually told them that you're blind. Well, I didn't actually know that at the time. And even if I would have, I still think I would have wanted to text him anyway, just to kind of clear the air, because I felt really awkward and just, like I said, I felt like an idiot the whole time after that whole situation. So I'm glad I disclosed it. And now if I ever need to go to the property to meet with them for any reason, or do any work, any repairs, anything like that at the property, they know what they're working with. So they just know, and it takes a huge weight off of my shoulders. So that's one situation of where I didn't disclose, and it actually turned into kind of an awkward situation. So one other situation I thought of that was, again, pretty awkward is, if you watched many of my videos, you've seen that I love to travel, and it was actually about 2 months ago, I was on a cruise. And if you've ever been on a cruise, you know that you're assigned a dining table, in the dining room, and then you just go to that same table every night and you dine with the same people. So the table that we were actually assigned to was an 8-person table. So there were 3 other couples there along with us. And the first night we arrived at the table, and I actually didn't have my cane with me. I just walked up to the table, we were holding hands, and that's typically what we do when I don't have my cane. But even when I do have my cane, we still hold hands. But anyway, we arrived at the table just holding hands, no cane, and we sat down, and everything was fine, as far as I didn't make an idiot of myself that night, that I felt like anyway. But we were talking and meeting the new people that we were having dinner with, and there were obviously times that I wasn't making any eye contact. When it came time to eat our food, I typically use my fork with my right hand, and then I use like my pointer finger on my left hand to kind of like maybe to kind of like manipulate or coax the food onto my fork, if that makes sense. And that's just what I do. That's what I find works best for me. Otherwise, I'm constantly like feeling around my plate with my fork, and it just works the best for me. So as I was doing that, I was eating and kind of like half eating with my fingers. Again, kind of awkward. But I didn't know this at the time, but after we left, my wife said, yeah, a couple of the guys were looking at you kind of weird. Like they were looking at you out of the corner of their eye, or they were watching you, and they kind of gave you some weird looks. And of course, I didn't see any of that, and I didn't know. But it's to be expected, because they're probably wondering, is this guy drunk? Is there something wrong with him? Like, what's going on with this guy? Why is he eating with his hands? Why isn't he making eye contact? Why did he come in and maybe like bump into a chair or bump on a table? Or why did he tell the waiter, when the waiter tried to hand him a menu, why did he not grab the menu? And then the wife said, just one menu, because that's what we do too. When we go to a restaurant, I don't take a menu, because there's no need to have a menu for me. So my wife just reads what's on the menu to me. So again, a lot of things weren't making sense for all the people at our table. So then the next night, so again, we left the dinner that night, and we didn't say anything. We didn't say anything just because we didn't do it. But the next night I thought, you know what? I don't want to have to explain to everybody the situation, because then everybody has all these questions, and what can you see? And oh, can you get glasses? Why can't you get LASIK? It's just so many questions. I'm sure all of you have heard all of these questions before if you're blind or visually impaired. It's all the same questions over and over. And I just didn't want to explain. So the next night I said, you know what? I'm just going to bring my cane. We're going to walk up to the table with the cane, and then that'll answer all of the questions that anybody has. So the next night, it was actually really funny, because we purposely showed up to the table maybe a few minutes late. And we did that because we wanted everybody to be at the table when we arrived. So we arrived at the table, and I walked up with my cane, and they were having a great conversation. They were talking and laughing and stuff like that, because I could hear them as we approached the table. And all of a sudden, when they saw us, it's like everybody froze, and they stopped talking. Everyone just kind of sat there. And then, typically in this situation, the couples sit across the table from each other, and the 2 spots that were left for us were directly across the table from each other, and the one wife kind of like barked at her husband and said, "Sam, get over here, let them sit there." So he jumped up out of his chair and he said, "Oh, I didn't touch the plate or the silverware. It's all clean. I didn't do anything." So anyway, he scurried over to the other side of the table, and then we were able to sit next to each other. But again, although it was an awkward situation for all of us, and we kind of broke into their conversation and no one knew what to say. Like, we literally sat there in silence. No one said a word for probably 3 to 4 minutes. It's like, it was so weird. But then once finally someone broke the ice and started talking again, it was fine. And it's like, maybe that wasn't the best approach on how to do that, but it's what I decided how to tell everybody, and everybody got it. There were no questions. Not a single question was asked about my vision or anything like that. And then it answered all of the questions that anybody had from the previous night, as far as, why was I acting weird? Why was I using my finger? Why wasn't I making eye contact? So it answered all of those questions. And for the rest of the cruise, that was on night 2. And for the rest of the cruise, we had such a great time. We met with all of these 3 other couples at the dining table every night, and we had just such a great time. And over the course of the cruise, we talked about it a few times here and there, and they were all so nice and so generous, and we ran into them many times on the ship, and they would all, walk up and say, "Oh, hey Matt, it's Paul," or "Hey Matt, it's Cindy." They would introduce, or they would identify who they are when they would approach me. So it made it really nice, and I'm really glad that I did finally disclose, not necessarily verbally, but I disclosed in a way that conveyed to everybody that I'm blind, visually impaired, low vision, whatever you want to call it. They figured it out very quickly, and that was a situation where I did not disclose initially, but I disclosed non-verbally after meeting, and it actually turned into a really good situation, although all of us had to endure an awkward situation for a few minutes on one night. So again, not really a big deal. It's just what I chose in that situation. As far as disclosing, there have been other times where I have disclosed, and again, it's been a really great situation. When was it? About almost 3 years ago, I bought a house, and which is actually one of our rental properties now. And I was looking at it, and I called up an agent, and before I actually went to the property, I said, "Hey, you know what, I just want to tell you, before I get there, I'm blind. I'm going to be showing up with my dad, and my dad will be helping me. He's going to drive, he's going to guide me into the house, and he's probably going to verbally explain what's going on in the house, maybe the layout, how things look, and he's probably going to guide me around a little bit too." So when we arrived, there were no questions as far as, why is this guy holding this other guy's arm, or why am I walking around with my hand on my dad's shoulder? Obviously she would have the realtor would have figured it out over time, or maybe in a little while. But again, I didn't have to go through all that awkward time where it was like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he doing this? I just, over the phone, said, "Okay, I'll meet you there at, whatever time, 5 o'clock. And hey, just to let you know, I'm blind, just so you're aware of my situation." And again, she was really nice. She was open. She was accepting. She helped me around. She verbalized things probably a lot more than she typically would have with a sighted client. And when I walked into the house, she, really verbalized in detail a lot of the different features about the house that anyone who's sighted would obviously just be able to look up and see the cabinets, or see the flooring, or see the walls, or the lighting fixtures, or whatever. So she explained a lot of that to me. So that was a really great situation where I disclosed prior to meeting, and it actually ended up being a really great situation, and just a really great interaction with this person. So those are a few examples, and obviously I have tons more examples, but those are just a few for now. I can always make another video at some point in the future giving you more examples of when I've disclosed or when I've not disclosed my vision, my low vision, blindness, to people that I'm meeting, prior to meeting, or just meeting at the time. So for me personally, I don't know how everybody else feels who's blind or visually impaired, but for me, I have a really hard time meeting someone and like walking up and being like, oh, hey, I'm Matt. Oh, by the way, I'm blind. To me, that's really awkward. So to me, I would prefer, if I'm going to disclose, I would prefer to do it over the phone, either speaking over the phone or through email. Those are my two preferred methods if I'm going to be disclosing to someone. Otherwise, I also like if somebody else discloses for me. For example, my wife, before I met her family, she told the entire family my situation, and it was all out there. I mean, it was all public information for them. They all knew, they understood, so that when it came time to meet them, it was really easy. It wasn't awkward, and I was just able to just meet them and just go on with things rather than acting like a freak and not making eye contact, not shaking hands, doing stuff like that. They probably would have said, hey, there's something wrong with this guy, you should get rid of him. So that was a situation where someone else disclosed for me, and again, I prefer that or over the phone or through email, but I typically don't like disclosing face to face with somebody, just because I don't know if that's just my personality or I don't know, but anyway, that's just what I prefer. I don't like doing the face-to-face disclosure. But otherwise, if I meet somebody, like the first example, the tenants from this weekend, if I meet someone face-to-face, we have an awkward situation or, whatever the situation might be, and then I may send them a text message, I may send them an email and just disclose then. Again, not preferred, but it is something that I've done many times. So anyway, those are some examples of disclosing, not disclosing my low vision, my blindness to people prior to or at the time of meeting, or slightly after the time of meeting. Anyway, if you haven't done so already, do me a huge favor, subscribe to my channel. It's a new channel and I'm doing as much as I can to get my face, my message, and just my videos in front of as many people as I can. So if you haven't, do me a huge favor, subscribe. Otherwise, do me another huge favor and share this video. Just share this video maybe with people who are blind, visually impaired, or just anybody else. It doesn't matter. Throw the link for this video up on Facebook and let other people watch it. I'd love to just get my message out to as many people as I can. So that'd be really cool if you shared my video or shared the link to my YouTube channel, anything like that. Otherwise, if you just like the video, hit the like button. And if you have any comments or questions, or if you're blind or visually impaired, I'd love to hear from you. What do you do? Do you disclose prior to meeting people? Do you disclose at the time of meeting people? Or do you disclose through other people? As in you have a friend, a spouse, a family member, anybody else disclose for you? Or do you just not disclose prior to meeting somebody and then you show up to the meeting with a cane or something like that, so you disclose that way? Anyway, if you're blind, visually impaired, and you disclose or don't disclose in any of those ways, I'd love to hear from you. Just let me know what you do. Leave a comment or question down below and I will answer it as quickly as I can. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.